All right, today we're going to talk about interviewing. We're going to talk about a specific aspect of interviewing. When you have a guest, you're asking questions. This one particular pet peeve is something that a lot of interviewers do. And I've mentioned it before in previous videos, but I wanted to give it its own little space here today on this short video. Thank you, by the way, for checking out the Sportscasters Club YouTube channel. Make sure to like, subscribe, share this with your friends. I try not to waste your time. I try to get right to it and share some important information for you, whether you're a sports broadcaster or a sports fan. But let's talk about this phase of interviewing that is often done incorrectly. I just heard it yesterday, which is why I wanted to make this video. It was not even a sports video. It was on YouTube. I was listening to a podcast, two guests, actually a host and a guest, and they were having a great conversation. I was engaged in it. And the host said, "Well, I just have one final question for you," and then asked the question. No big deal. Probably most people wouldn't even think anything of that. He asked the question, the guest answered it, they wrapped up the interview, that was that. But I think over time and with experience, for anyone like myself who's used that, I'm sure I did when I was young, 30 years ago, I'm sure I used that at the end of an interview. And I said, one last question. But over the years, I've learned you never want to do that. And I've learned from people like Roy Firestone or Larry King or some of the great interviewers, Bob Costas. Because let's say I'm interviewing a player, Mike Trout. Mike, that was just an awesome game you had. One last question from me, Mike. Why was this so important for your team? And let's say Mike Trout says, well, it was just so important of a win because we've never had that guy come to watch us ever before. And he came to watch us, and it was amazing. Now, obviously, if I'm listening, if I'm a competent interviewer, which certainly, as you know, they're not all competent, what I should do in that situation is follow up and say, well, who are you talking about that was there for the first time? Who are you referring to that made this such an important game? Obviously, I'd have to follow up and ask. But if I just said, this is my last question, then that makes it incongruent. It makes it a falsehood. In other words, when you say one last question, you put yourself in a corner. You put yourself in a box. And if your guest leaves it open and gives you a softball to follow up on, it's not the end of the world. A lot of people wouldn't notice it, but we want broadcasters to be perfect. We always want to shoot for being the best we can be and being the most accurate we can be and delivering 100% on our broadcast. It's never going to happen, but that's the goal. And so there's an incongruence there. If I just said, this is my last question, and then I end up asking you another question, it's not the end of the world, but it just brings my broadcast down a little bit of a peg. It brings the interview down just a little. And sometimes a viewer or a listener subconsciously will take those things in. And you become less of an interviewer, less of a sports broadcasting professional in their eyes, even if they don't know it, because it's subconscious. So I guarantee you've never heard Bob Costas do that because he's so good. He's fantastic. You've never heard him do that. You probably never heard Larry King do it. You probably never heard some of the other great interviewers. Michael Kay is another, just a fantastic interviewer who's done most of his work in the New York area. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Again, a lot of the videos we do here at Sportscasters Club are nitpicks, things that you and I might notice, but other people wouldn't. But I want you to. Because the next time you're watching a broadcast or listening to an interview of any kind, sports, news, you can hear that and you can say, that wasn't right. That wasn't done correctly. Or maybe you hear somebody do it perfectly. And you hear somebody ask their last question without saying, this is going to be my last question. Because then you're open to continue if the answer dictates that you continue. Now, obviously, the cardinal sin in that scenario that I just painted you would be if Mike Trout said, well, it was just such a special game because he had never seen us play before. And it was just so amazing to have him watch us play. The cardinal sin as an interviewer would be to not even follow up and just say, okay, Mike, thanks for the time. And how many times do you hear that? Where you have a guest say something, and as the listener or the viewer, you're on the edge of your seat, you want to know what they were referring to. You wanted some clarification, and the interviewer never follows up and asks. So don't be that kind of interviewer either. That is even worse. Not following up is even worse than saying this is my last question and then asking a follow-up question. But in a perfect world, with a perfect interview, you don't want to do either. So I hope you learned something from this. Like the video, subscribe for more content like this about being a better sportscaster and a better sports fan, and I'll see you next time.